Power FM is hosting the second annual Chairman's Interview. This year's guest is Johann Rupert, Chairman of Swiss-based luxury goods company Richemont and locally based company Remgro. MSG Afrika Group Chairman Given Mkhari is the host this evening, and he promises to not shy away from tough questions and give South Africans an insight into who Rupert really is. Well, eNCA's Thualsizwe Simelane is attending the event and joins me now. Now, Thulas, the proponents of radical economic transformation had threatened to invade Power FM headquarters, to protest. Any sight of them?
No, we've not seen any people, Vuyo, that have come out to the venue to protest the appearance of Remgro chairperson Johann Rupert. So we've not seen any people that have come out to protest. You mentioned the group that you say are proponents of radical economic transformation, and they make a very interesting group of people in relation to Johann Rupert. But also, you will remember that there was also another threat of a possible protest by the activists that associate themselves with the total shutdown movement over Johann Rupert's appearance alongside Given Mkhari, given recent developments that did happen in the family of Given Mkhari and his wife Ipeleng. We've not seen that group either coming out to protest. So those are the two controversies coming into this particular event. But as you rightly point out, Johann Rupert, immediately when you mention his name, you were always going to talk about the issue of the economy, its structure and ownership in South Africa, the extent to which it benefits all South Africans or doesn't benefit all South Africans. And I can assure you that Given Mkhari, the chairman of MSG Afrika, has given the assurance that all of those issues will of course be raised. And it promises to be really interesting, Vuyo, because if you know Johann Rupert, well, even from a distance, if you've followed his commentary, he really doesn't pull punches.
He's something of an enigma as well, in that, I mean, beyond those comments that we hear from him from time to time, people know very little about this super rich person and what drives him.
Yeah, absolutely. South Africa's second richest man. And as Given Mkhari said in the last week, actually it's quite interesting that a lot of South Africans interact with companies in which, you know, Remgro or Richemont, for that matter, has a stake or, you know, control of without even knowing it. So groups such as Mediclinic, Rand Merchant Bank, First Rand are some of the brands that people will immediately recognize. And of course, Remgro is a shareholder in the parent company of eMedia Holdings, a minority shareholder, as it were. But also products such as Cartier and Mont Blanc when you talk Richemont. So, I mean, this is someone whose products, or perhaps products that he's associated with, we interact with on a daily basis. But as Given Mkhari has said, he is an enigma. Except, of course, we know many of his political views. For starters, he was very vocal around the issue to do with former President Jacob Zuma and his leadership of the country. And it did, in 2016, call for Zuma to step down, saying, quote unquote, for the sake of our children. And just as late as last week, it's reported that at the Remgro AGM, he was actually even talking about how you know, this, of course, is I must emphasize, is from media reports that I've read, that he said at the Remgro AGM that the former president and those associated with him actually went as far as to get agencies involved to, quote unquote, dig up dirt on Johann Rupert after he made that call for for Zuma to step down. And also, who can forget his views on radical economic transformation, where he basically said it's a cover for people who want to steal and to loot, and which drew, of course, widespread reaction from those who are proponents of radical economic transformation, including, of course, the person who was at that point running to be president of the ANC, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who really took a strong stance against Johann Rupert's labeling RET as a cover for looting.
He comes into this interview, of course, against that background you've just sketched so well, Thulas, but also with the proponents of radical economic transformation and the supporters of former President Jacob Zuma, saying if there was ever state capture, Anton Rupert was the person who actually captured the state long before the phrase was even coined.
Absolutely right. And this, of course, Anton Rupert being Johann Rupert's father and the founder of the group of companies that then became known as Rembrandt Group. So absolutely that narrative has been out there. A lot of people have expressed that view, that if you're talking state capture, these are some of the people who are the poster children or poster boys, I don't know what the right expression is, of state capture. And it's out there in the public narrative. But let's also bring another perspective and another factor into all of this. You will recall there was a point at which Johann Rupert his mention was almost always followed by the phrase white monopoly capital. This is, of course, in 2016, at the peak of the tensions around the issue of state capture in the country. And you'll remember the role that then was played at that point by the now defunct PR firm, Bell Pottinger, the UK firm, which interestingly had done a lot of work with Johann Rupert himself for his company Richemont, and basically just turned around and accepted the Guptas as a client, and basically at the peak of that campaign, it must be added, a campaign to sort of divide South Africans. They then took the opposite side, and Johann Rupert was on the receiving end of some of their vitriol. And so, of course, that's the other perspective to all of this. And also, quickly to mention, Vuyo, the whole issue of the jobs that Johann Rupert says his companies have created over the decades, and also not to mention some of the work that he does undertake through his companies. Just yesterday, there was a drive to hand out title deeds in the Western Cape, which he says is actually something that he's committed to.
Okay, Thulas, that's where we're going to leave it for now. We'll talk to you again a little later on. Thulas, of course, will be staying put there for that interview. And eNCA will be broadcasting the Power FM Chairman's conversation live here on the channel just after 8 o'clock.